Welcome and happy birthday. My name is Annie Gillespie, and I am the event chair of the Shiny Mountains chapter of the Montana Wilderness Association. We are one of 7 chapters across Montana. Our chapter represents a very large area in western Montana. We go all the way south to Darby, north to Thompson Falls, and west to the Montana-Idaho border. The Shiny Mountains chapter is based in Missoula, and we offer monthly events, both informative as well as social. We like to have fun while we talk about wild places. It really is a good group. It is also great to be here online with you all tonight, so we can continue with our tradition of monthly gatherings and to reach out to our members during this time of isolation and social distancing. I hope all of you are staying safe. I personally am very grateful to be in this great state, which has allowed me to get outside, walk on some trails, and clear my mind of all the global problems. The Montana Wilderness Association is a nonprofit dedicated to promoting Montana's wild places, including protecting public lands. Our motto is keep it wild. One way our chapter is working to keep it wild is focusing on the Great Burn area. If you are not familiar with the area called the Great Burn, you have tuned into the right place tonight. Tonight, you will hear a lot about the Great Burn. It's a 252,000 acre roadless landscape on the Montana-Idaho border. The Great Burn has received one of the highest wilderness ratings of any recommended wilderness area managed by the Forest Service. The Forest Service has recommended that it be designated as a wilderness area since the 1970s, and it has been included in no fewer than 13 congressional proposals. The Montana Wilderness Association, especially the Shiny Mountains chapter, has been working very hard to build public support for the Great Burn Wilderness designation. We feel the time is right. More about the Great Burn later in our presentation. But first, we're going to kick off our hiking season. We have hikes and other outdoor activities planned throughout the state. Our chapter alone has 20 hikes. If you're interested in learning about hikes in other parts of the state, I would encourage you to go online. All the chapters are offering hikes this summer, but ours are throughout the Shiny Mountain chapter area. Registration opens May 4th at 9 a.m. for members. The hikes are popular and they fill up fast, so I would encourage you to become a member if you're not, so you can sign up early and be sure to get a spot. Registration for the general public opens on May 7th, and all are invited to participate. We hope to have a successful hiking season this year, but due to the pandemic, we may have to make adjustments. We will all keep you all informed as we learn about the unfolding news. The Montana Wilderness Association is dedicated to following state guidelines, so we're all safer and stronger together. But hopefully we can get out and enjoy our 2020 hiking season. So please join if you're not a member and sign up early to get your spot. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Young. He's a member of our events committee, and Mike is going to go into greater detail about all the hikes we have planned this summer.
Hi. I hope many of you have had a chance to get out and enjoy the beautiful spring day we had today. I certainly did, and it's got me thinking about the summer hiking season. I'd like to start out by just giving a big thank you to all the hike leaders and co-leaders, several of whom have volunteered to lead 2, 3, or even 4 trips this summer. Without their efforts, these things just wouldn't happen. So it's great that they're doing it. They've also provided me with some great photos, and I've put together a slideshow to illustrate the hikes, and I'll also be reading the hike descriptions that they submitted when they proposed the hikes to MWA. In some cases, I've edited those descriptions a bit to keep them all fairly similar in length, so my apologies to the leaders if I've left out a favorite phrase or something, but I'm going to try and give each slide for each hike roughly 25 or 30 seconds on screen, so that they have roughly equal coverage. Give me a second here and I'll pull up the beginning of the slideshow. So as Annie said, the Shining Mountains chapter has 20 hikes this summer in our region, and they range from a couple of fairly short kid-friendly walks to a half marathon trail run in the Great Burn, to a couple of day backpacking trip also in the Great Burn, and just about everything in between. There's one slide for each hike, and I've got them in chronological order, so they're coming up in the order they'll take place this summer. The first one is in late May, assuming things don't have to change because of the pandemic, and they run through late September or so. For each hike, I'll give a brief description, which the hike leader put together, and I'll also, for those of you who are like me who aren't necessarily real familiar with the area, I'm pretty new, I'll indicate the general area where the hike is located by giving a nearby town or other obvious landmark. So, uh-oh. I'm trying to advance and that's not happening. Let me think here for a second.
Hi, Mike.
Yep,
Just one, we are not yet seeing your screen. So go ahead and go into share screen mode first.
Well, I can't get out of. Okay. Hang on a second. I'll have to pull up the presentation again. Sorry about that. I'm making progress. Let's see. Okay.
Great, we can see your screen now.
That's a plus. Okay, and I think I'm now in full screen mode.
Looks great,
looking
Mike.
better? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for each hike, there's one slide. And somewhere on the slide will be the basic information like the date of the hike, the names of the leaders, the distance, and roughly the elevation gain. So the first hike is Lake Como, which is down in the Hamilton area. This is a fairly easy hike with little elevation gain. We'll hike 3.2 miles to the Como Falls and return on the same trail. Now we'll see. Okay, it looks like that's working. Solstice Saturday at Milltown State Park. This is near Missoula. Learn about human and natural history as we hike from the Milltown Bluff to the restored floodplain of the Clark Fork River. South Fork Lolo Creek. This is near Lolo. We start off following a flat trail alongside the fast-running South Fork, followed by a stiff uphill that puts us onto a ridge trail with westward views of the Graves Range. We'll be in and out of burned areas from the 2017 Lolo Peak fire, offering some observations on fire recovery and hopefully wildflowers. Mount Headley. This is near Thompson Falls. A glorious ridgetop hike to a prominent peak with a magnificent view into Canada, Idaho, and a big chunk of Montana. The hike is within the Cube Iron Cataract area. Mike Giese of the White Bark Pine Ecosystem Foundation will lead an informal inventory along our route. Crescent Lakes and Marshall Lakes. This is near Seeley Lake. From the trailhead, we'll hike to Crescent Lake, take a break, and then proceed over the Swan Crest into the Bob Marshall Wilderness. We'll pass by some of the Marshall Lakes as we look down the Marshall drainage. Now, several of the hike leaders sent more than one photo in, and I've been pretty ruthless about just picking the one that I like the best, but I couldn't resist adding in a second one for this hike. If you don't know Lee Bowman, he's our chapter president and a true friend of Wilderness. He's also the person who's signed up to co-lead or lead 4 of the hikes this summer. So if you haven't met him before, you likely will if you get out on a hike. Diamond Lake and Cliff Lake. This is near Superior. This is a truly wonderful kid-friendly hike where you'll also feel very much in the mountains. And the co-leaders will be bringing their kids. The route in the Great Burn Proposed Wilderness takes you from one lake to another, through some woods, as well as a meadow with great wildflowers. We'll include a midway stop for lunch or snacks and a simple kids activity. Lolo Peak, White Bark Pine, Fire, and the Carlton Ridge RNA. This is near Lolo. We'll carpool to the Mormon Creek trailhead, hike up the Mormon Creek Trail to Carlton Lake, and look at alpine larch and whitebark pine forest burned in the 2017 Lolo Peak fire. From Carlton Lake, we'll ascend cross-country to Lolo Peak, just within the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. Blacklead Mountain, near Lolo, or actually, I think closer to Lolo Pass. Blacklead Mountain is in the most remote portion of the Great Burn Recommended Wilderness, along the Idaho-Montana state line. We may see mountain goats as we hike out a ridge overlooking Goat Lake. We'll be hiking through alpine meadows and occasional trees, with little blocking our views of the mountains surrounding us. Take this trip to learn more about the wildest portion of the Great Burn and to support its continued inclusion in the Great Burn Recommended Wilderness. State Line Heart Lake Trail Run, near Superior. A delightful high alpine trail run. This is a lollipop route that starts at Hoodoo Pass, travels the State Line Trail above Heart and Pearl Lakes, then drops down to visit those 2 lakes. From Heart Lake, we'll climb back up to the State Line Trail and return to the pass.
I hope so.
Wildflowers
Why can't I hear it?
outstanding.
I didn't turn it off.
I'm hearing some other voices. Is everything going okay, or?
Yeah, I can't play Wizard of Oz for us right now. Whoever's logged in as JC Ryder, if you can mute yourself, that would be great. Or if you're not sure where the mute button is, just hold off on talking for the time being.
I can do that one.
Okay. Sunday Mountain. This is near Seeley Lake. This is one of the quickest routes to the crest of the Swan Range. Views of the Missions and the Clearwater Valley to the west increase as you climb. From the crest, the Bob Marshall Wilderness area fills your view to the east. Below you is Grizzly Basin, which will become part of the Bob once the Blackfoot Clearwater
I
Stewardship
don't
Act becomes law.
know. Some of them, but
Killer views, important landscape, grizzly country, huckleberries,
that's
and a steep
it.
route. What else could you ask for?
Yeah.
Mike, I'm going to have you just open your participant list quickly and mute JC Ryder for us. And then we'll pick up where we left
You
off
tell me.
with Sunday
Do I have to
Mountain.
leave this meeting?
Thanks. Good job, Mike. You're all set.
Usually
Oh.
on the side.
Sorry, mute him again.
Oops. Okay, I think I got it this time. We good?
You're muted by
I think he keeps on muting you. So if you have an option, you might need to just remove him from the meeting.
Speakers and assistant. Switch to audio settings.
volume.
Speaker. Volume.
Okay, I
Can you
think
see
I
that?
removed them.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Sunday Mountain, repeating the last one. This is near Sealy Lake. This is one of the quickest routes to the crest of the Swan Range. Views of the Missions and the Clearwater Valley to the west increase as you climb. From the crest, the Bob Marshall Wilderness area fills your view to the east. Below you is Grizzly Basin, which will become part of the Bob once the Blackfoot Clearwater Stewardship Act becomes law. Killer views, important landscape, grizzly country, huckleberries, and a steep route. What else could you ask for? Uh-oh. No, I'm not able to advance the slides again. I may have to back out and start over again.
All right. Well, let's then at this point, Mike, well, why don't we split this in half?
Actually, maybe I can just go back to full screen mode. Let me try that. Yep, it's working.
Okay.
Okay. Rhodes Peak Backpack near Lolo, or actually again, closer to Lolo Pass, I think. We'll leave the Black Lead Mountain trailhead hiking downhill 4 miles to Goat Lake, our campsite. The following day, we'll take an 8-mile round-trip day hike to Williams Peak and Rhodes Peak at 7,930 feet, the highest peak in the Great Burn Recommended Wilderness. Regrettably, this area is in danger of being carved out of the recommended wilderness to allow snowmobiling. On the final day, we climb back to the trailhead. Only persons who are over 18 and have some backpacking experience will be allowed on this trip. There will be a pre-trip meeting to discuss gear and logistics. Mount Silcox Loop. This is near Thompson Falls. We'll go by Goat Lakes to the top of Mount Silcox on the southeast end of the Cube Iron Silcox roadless area. Excellent views. Co-sponsored by the Cube Iron Cataract Coalition. A high clearance vehicle will be needed to access the trailhead. Dunham Creek Trail near Sealy Lake. Join us on a landscape that will be protected as part of the Bob Marshall Wilderness under the Blackfoot Clearwater Stewardship Act. Learn about the BCSA and ways to lend your support to this collaborative grassroots bill while hiking along a scenic creek to reach a waterfall crossing and scenic open meadows. Co-hosted with the Montana chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Clearwater Lake, also near Sealy Lake. Views of the Missions, a good chance of seeing loons, and perhaps some huckleberries will be enjoyed on this family-friendly walk around Clearwater Lake. This is an easy walk, but also one of the most scenic hikes in Montana. Make sure your phone is charged because you'll take a bunch of photos. This is an area that produces abundant wildlife and will be enhanced with the passage of the Blackfoot Clearwater Stewardship Act. South Lost Horse Creek near Hamilton. After crossing over Lost Horse Creek, we'll follow the creek through a plethora of huckleberry bushes and forest cover, observing interesting rock outcroppings above the trail before reaching a wonderful swimming hole. Blodgett Canyon, also near Hamilton. We'll hike along Blodgett Creek, crossing a couple of talus slopes on the way to a nice waterfall where we'll have lunch. The route climbs, mostly gradually, through a glacial valley carved into the granites of the Idaho batholith, producing scenery reminiscent of Yosemite. Turquoise Lake, near Seeley Lake. The power of glacial erosion will be evident as we hike past 4 lakes on our way to Turquoise Lake, 6 scenic miles and 2,000 feet above the trailhead. The lake is surrounded by rock ramps you'll find tempting to explore. Bob Marshall hiked to Turquoise Lake on September 3rd, the same date as our hike, but 92 years earlier. We can imagine and discuss differences between Bob's turquoise experience and ours. CICC Ridgetop, near Thompson Falls. From Vermilion Pass to Slide Rock Mountain, trail number 529 goes partly through an area burned in 2017 and also through a stand of monster old spruce trees. This is within the Cube Iron Cataract area. Mike Giese of the Whitebark Pine Ecosystem Foundation will lead an informal inventory along our route. Hoodoo Pass to Heart Lake Trailhead, near Superior. This is a point-to-point hike. From Hoodoo Pass, we'll hike south along the state line trail to the Heart Lake overlook, then drop down to the lake and out to the trailhead. The views should be gorgeous from this ridgeline, and there will be the fall colors and a chance of seeing mountain goats on the cliffs. St. Mary Peak Whitebark Pine Ecology, near Stevensville. We'll hike from the St. Mary trailhead up to the Whitebark Pine stands near Treeline, where we'll discuss the ecology of whitebark pine ecosystems. If time, snow conditions, and interest allow, we'll continue to the top of St. Mary Peak. And those were the 20 hikes set up by the Shining Mountains chapter. I think really something for just about everyone. I hope you'll be able to join us on one.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen now. And hi, everybody. I'm Erin Clark, the Western Montana Field Director for the Montana Wilderness Association. I always look forward to our hiking and trail season, and is that ever heightened this year? Whoa. And thank you, Mike, for sharing that complete lineup. We really remain hopeful we can fully deliver this program this summer, and I'd like to extend a huge thank you to our hike leaders and co-leaders who make this happen. They're an incredible amount of fun to be out with on the trails, and we're excited to help make it possible for you to join them out there this summer. These individuals, I can't say enough about them. They really are truly super volunteers, and if you'd like to join their crew, there are opportunities to become a leader or a co-leader in future seasons, but come out and join us first on a hike this year. Speaking of super, I am very, very excited, and we are super, super lucky that 2 dedicated and talented cartographers live here in our Missoula community. Amelia Hagen-Dillon and Jamie Robertson of Cairn Cartographics are truly outstanding. They produce extremely high quality maps of wildlands areas across Western Montana. And if you know how to raise your hand and zoom, go ahead and raise your hand if you already own at least one Cairn map. If you don't know how to raise your hand and zoom, no worries at all. I'm going to give you another way to interact with us here. I know the online platform isn't an ideal one, and we've had some technical difficulties at all. I appreciate you being here and rolling with it, and we're going to just do a really quick poll. You just got to see slides of all of those incredible hikes that are going to be offered this summer. I am really curious which ones caught your attention. So you should get a pop-up window on your screen now, and this is your chance to indicate which of those hikes you just heard about from Mike you'd be interested in attending this summer. So go ahead and click on any that you would like to participate in. I'll give you all a moment to scroll through those options and collect your votes. Nice. Oh, it looks like our late season hikes are going to fill up quickly. Oh, early season too. Excellent. Leading the pack right now looks like Sunday Mountain, and that is truly an exceptional hike. That's one you're going to want to log on early for and sign up for right away. It fills right away. Our St. Mary Peak White Bark Pine hike has got a lot of interest as well as some of the hikes in the Great Burn, which is great because we're going to talk more about the Great Burn here shortly. All right, cast any final votes. And we'll close out the poll. Thanks for interacting. Oh, Turquoise Lake bubbling up to the top. I like to see that. Great. Well, all the hike leaders who are here on the call, I hope this is getting you excited. There's a lot of interest in everything we're offering. Thank you all for voting. And I'll share the results here with you all so that you can see those. Amelia and Jamie of Cairn have an approach to map making that includes building an in-depth and in-person appreciation for each of the landscapes that they produce a map for. And I believe that you can really tangibly feel that connection when you use their maps. Even laying them out on your dining room table and doing planning, you can tell their attention to detail and their true understanding of the place and how they've represented landscapes on their maps. A number of years ago, MWA, the Great Burn Study Group, which is now the Great Burn Conservation Alliance, Idaho Conservation League, and Friends of Scotchman Peaks teamed up to produce a map of the Great Burn. I suspect it might have been a resource for many of you, but I'm going to be honest with you. It was not a map that was designed to be used for navigation purposes. And many people tried to use it that way in the backcountry. I think that's what we count on our maps for. And we heard from a lot of people who attempted to use our map to do multi-day hikes or day hikes into the Great Burn that oftentimes it fell short. Last year around this time, we realized that we were going to run out of these maps that we had produced of the Great Burn, and we faced a decision about what to do. We decided we needed to find a way to produce a map that the user could rely on to experience the Great Burn. And the maps that we were capable of producing on our own were not going to meet those standards. And the best choice for a partner out there was decisively obvious. There was only one team here making maps in our area that we knew could produce a Great Burn map with the care and the quality that we feel this special area deserves. And that was Amelia and Jamie of Cairn. So I am delighted to be here now, 1 year later, ecstatic to be alongside Jamie and Amelia on this in this event to release the final product to you. They've produced a beautiful, functional, highly detailed map of the Great Burn, and we can't thank Amelia and Jamie enough. This map is everything we dreamed of, and quite frankly, a little bit more. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Amelia and Jamie, who will share what it takes to produce top-notch maps of our favorite wilderness and to-be wilderness destinations here in Western Montana. Thanks so much, Jamie and Amelia. I'm going to give you permissions here in just one moment.
Yay. Hello, can everybody hear us?
I think so.
Is our video on?
I think we're
You look good, and I think we can hear you clearly.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. We will flip back to the video in a little bit here, but we're going to go right into our presentation.
because you'd probably rather look at that than at our faces.
So yes, Thank you, Aaron, for that introduction. Thank you all for being here with us tonight on this beautiful Montana evening. I'm Jamie Robertson, and this is Amelia, and we are, for the fourth time, the duo that makes up Cairn Cartographics, and we're really happy to be here tonight celebrating this map release of the Great Burn. Of course, we wish we could all be in person to lay these maps out on the table and look at them together, but here we are doing what we need, doing what we can do. So just some background on us. We started in 2008 was when we met, and we were in Yellowstone doing field research together. We were collecting ground truthing data for remote sensing projects in the Yellowstone ecosystem for a nonprofit in Bozeman. And we got a lot of experience in some amazing places and some field research technology type stuff we learned. And we decided to carry that over into this business of making recreation maps. And it's been a decade now, which is hard to believe, but we have produced 8 and now 9 with the addition of the Great Burn map, 9 recreation maps. And as well, we've also produced 4 poster maps, wall maps of the public lands in Montana, Idaho, and Colorado. And you can check those out at cairncarto.com. The first map we made was a place that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the Bob Marshall Wilderness. I had worked there previously with the Forest Service doing trail work out of Big Prairie. So that was the first place that we made a map of. And, you know, that was when we really developed our methodology for making maps. We got into the rhythm of collecting the data and then really understanding a place that we were going to make a map of. And that just became a core of what we wanted to do when we make a map. It's so much easier to make a map of a place that you've been and you know what's there than otherwise. So we really pride ourselves on that quality of being in a place and knowing it really well to make the map of it. And just wild lands. We are blessed here in Western Montana and Idaho to have so much amazing wild country around us. So that's always been a focus of our work and where we want to spend our time. So that comes through in our maps. You know, our maps are of all very special places in Western Montana and Idaho. And we're really happy to partner with MWA on that just because our goals and our desires align so well.
So we thought we would just talk a little bit about some of the things we think are really important to think about as we're making maps, and then a little bit about the process for making them. So this is our dog Piper up on the state line trail near Hoodoo Pass, helping us make some decisions about which way to go and how to mark some things on the map. So one important distinction that I think we like to make is that we think of maps as a tool for planning and understanding a place first and for navigating second. And it's a pretty subtle distinction, but I think it's an important one. Like anyway, if you've ever tried to plan a road trip on a phone screen or something, you know how limiting like a little piece of a map that's out of context can be, and how important it is to have the whole big picture. Or if you're planning a backpacking trip or you're planning a longer day hike or something, it's really important to have the whole, like where you're going in context. And so we think a lot about what someone who's planning something will want on the map when they're planning on it, and what will help the landscape feel familiar and accessible once they're there. So this is just a small example. This is our map of Glacier National Park. When we made this map, we put all the 3-letter codes for the backcountry campsites on the campsite, on where the campsites are. Because when we were making this map, in the process of making this map, we spent a lot of time applying for backcountry permits, and the maps we had didn't have those codes on them, and it required a lot of back and forth between like multiple websites and maps and stuff. And so that's just a small example, but just like thinking about what people are going to need information people are going to need. So one of the reasons we try to spend as much time in the field as possible is to just understand what will be helpful. And so we're there to GPS trails, that's kind of the main reason, but we're also there to just get familiar with a place. You know, oftentimes something will appear with a different name in Google Maps or in your atlas or something, and then we get there on the ground, the sign will say something different. So we take tons of pictures of signs. We make lots of notes about all different things. And so these are just some of those pictures. This is our app that collects the aspect and the lat long of a photo when you take it, which comes in really handy. Overall, we were really impressed with the signage in the Great Burn. There's like most of the trails that were there had really good signs. So here's just a couple more examples. We take a lot of pictures out the window of the car too, of road signs. So there's definitely a less glamorous part of researching a map, which involves a lot of time on dirt roads in the car. So another thing we think a lot about that we want maps to do is how they help people and help us fit the different pieces of landscape together and kind of give you that aha feeling about like, that's how these two drainages fit together, or that's how this peak fits in, or that's how this lake is tucked up against that ridge. And so we want our maps to kind of give you that same feeling that you get when you're on top of a peak or when you're looking out the window of a plane and you see all these pieces of a landscape and you kind of see how they all fit together. So this is Jamie up on the State Line Trail, and this is the same section of map from the same place. And you can kind of see how this ridgeline, you know, it's very prominent between these two drainages, and it's kind of the same way on the map. So that's kind of something we're trying to convey, is that same feeling. And this is a picture of the Pintlers from out the window of a plane on a flight to Denver on a really clear day. And this is our map of the Pintlers next to it. It might be a little small for you to be able to see it, but you can see that you kind of get the same sense from the landscape from both. And so that's something we're always trying to think of in as we're making our maps, is how can we give people a sense of what the landscape actually looks like as we're making it. And here's another one. This is from Rhodes Peak, which you heard about in the hikes a little bit, and same idea. We spend a lot of time up on ridge lines, just kind of taking it all in and putting all the pieces together. And then the last thing we really think about is how maps can be vehicles for telling stories. You heard about how we started with our map of the Bob Marshall. So when I first moved to Missoula, I moved into a house with 5 people who'd all worked in the Bob together. And it took me a while until I didn't feel like an outsider in that. And it wasn't really until I got to know the Bob too that I felt like I was part of that community. And we made this map. This is our map of it's a poster map of the Bob Marshall area. And we made this map because we knew so many people who had stories about the Bob, and we wanted to help bring those stories to life. And when a map is somewhere on display, it like instantly becomes this focal point of conversation, and people start telling stories about the trips they've been on. They talk about where they saw a bear, or where they picked a bunch of huckleberries, or which route they took up a peak. And I think places like this are really a glue that can hold communities together. And I mean, that's definitely evidenced by how many people called into this Zoom call on a beautiful Tuesday evening. And I think maps as representations of these places can really strengthen those bonds. And when people weave their personal geographies together, they become even closer. And so that's something we're always thinking about as we're making maps, is how our maps can help bring people closer together and also closer to these places. So on that note, we're going to just go through a few of our pictures from this summer, and we don't have any really great stories from the Great Burn yet. Apparently, maybe we haven't spent enough time back there yet, but we do have some good shots, and we thought it would be fun to scroll through and tell you about some of the places we visited, and then we'll tell you a little bit more about the map.
Yeah, we didn't have any epic trips that really stick out in our mind as far as problems, which we sometimes have, but we had some great experiences while we were doing the research for this map. This here is Rhodes Peak, and it is, as has been said multiple times, it's a fantastic peak and just a really neat perspective on the Great Burn, as well as looking back to the east at the Bitterroots. So definitely a cool place up there. One of the things that was interesting about the Great Burn is that despite living in Missoula, Amelia and I had not spent very much time there. We'd been busy in all these other wilderness areas and other places in Montana making those other maps. So this was our first summer to really spend some time back there. And what really struck us was just, the ruggedness and the wildness and just the character of the place was just amazing. It truly is special. And this is just a classic view from kind of the state line trail and these rugged cliffs giving way to meadows and all kinds of benches, and just really, really fantastic.
This is the trail along Kelly Creek, which is probably one of the more popular areas of the Great Burn that gets more use. It's a blue ribbon trout stream. It gets a lot of use from fisher people and backpackers and outfitters, but it's way bigger drainage than I realized until I got back there, and it's definitely worth the trip. It's pretty spectacular.
This is another favorite spot, was the Blacklead Trailhead, and the lakes out of there was a fantastic trip. This is a ridge where you can get up again and see the Bitterroots laid out in front of you, and just get some great views of the vast backyard that we have in western Montana, and experience how big the area is. So hard to get there, but the views are definitely worth it.
This is Goat Lake, which we get to from the trailhead that is in the last picture. And that trailhead the road is long and rough to get up there. But once you get up there, it's definitely worth it. This is one of our favorite areas of the Great Burn, probably less use than this is the south part, and this probably gets less use than the area up around State Line Trail off of Hoodoo Pass. So, and then this was the ridgeline above Cache Creek on the southern part of the State Line Trail that is accessed off of Lolo Pass. And these ridgelines are pretty cool. You're getting up into that Idaho granite and getting views. That's Rhodes Peak in the center in the background there. And so pretty cool day. This was looking south into Idaho off the State Line Trail near Hoodoo Pass, those big meadows there, and one of those days where you could just see forever.
And then we would be remiss if we didn't mention all the fantastic lakes in the Great Burn. Coming from Missoula, where we don't have lots of lakes right around Missoula, it's always such a treat to go up and have a destination of a lake, and there are truly some gems in the Great Burn. So it's always really nice to have one of those as a destination.
This is Pearl Lake, which is the little sister to Heart Lake, up above Heart Lake. And this is Heart Lake, probably one of the most famous lakes in the Great Burn, and well-deserved fame, but can be a little crowded.
And this was closing out our final trip of the field season out of the Clearwater Crossing Trailhead as winter was taking hold. And one of the things that we didn't get a great picture of, but is also a really special thing about the Great Burn, are the big just cedar groves that happen on many of the trails that we were on. Those dense, dark cedar groves that are a respite from the sun in the summer, and just always special places to walk through. And there were quite a few on this stretch too. So, oops.
Cool. And so a few details about the map. It's similar to our other recreation maps, if you've seen any of those. It's a 1:63,360 scale, so it's 1 inch to 1 mile. It has the same shaded relief and forested areas as our other maps. We put the 1910 historic fire perimeter on there because we thought that was kind of fun to think about while you're back there. Has 100-foot contours. It's printed on the same waterproof, tear-resistant paper that we've printed all of our maps on. It's durable. It holds up to a lot of use. Has the UTM grid ready to use with your GPS. Same trail classification scheme as our other maps. So the trails that don't get maintained very often or that might require some route finding are classified as such. And then the main trails that get more maintenance are, marked as primary, which is helpful for route planning. And we've GPS verified most of the trails. So yeah, we're really excited to have this one out in the world. And Jamie's gonna try to show us around a little bit.
If the technology gods are good to us, we're gonna go to a viewer here that you can look at the map, and this will also be linked in the link that Aaron's gonna give us in a while. So if you wanna pan around in detail later on this evening, you're more than welcome to do that, but I'll try to get to it here. Okay, so here we're looking at both panels of the new map put together. So there's a south side and a north side. And just kind of a quick tour around here. We'll start off up here in the, just to orient ourselves. Here's some great information about the area that NWA helped put together. And then you can see I-90 here is kind of the top of the map. There's Sear and Tarkio. And then headed off towards Superior this way. And then we'll start off by going through a common access here. So this is Fish Creek. So this is the Fish Creek access, headed down. And as you head down, you get to the Forks fishing access. Down the South Fork of Fish Creek. You'll get to the Schley trailhead access and Cache Creek. And then continuing south, we cross over onto the south side map. And from the south side map, we head down and we hit the Granite Peak trailhead and then Highway 12. So, the connection over to Highway 12. So Lolo Hot Springs and the Lee Creek area. And then headed up, I guess, to Lolo Pass, and then the State Line trailhead access there and the Granite Pass trailhead. So then the map extends down to down Highway 12 on the Idaho side. And now we're getting into sort of the access. Zoom out a little bit here and show the access of coming in off of the Highway 12 to the north. So the Parachute Hill Road and up to the 500 Road. That's this side here. So here's the Lolo Motorway and the Blacklead Trailhead that we've talked quite a bit about. There's Rhodes Peak. And then I'm gonna zoom out real quick again. So the 500 Road turns into the 581 all the way over to Cayuse Creek over here. And then Kelly Creek, which we mentioned. And then from Kelly Creek, heads back up onto the north side map and up to Fish Lake and Goose Creek. And then the Cedars and the North Fork, the Clearwater, and then the 250 Road, which climbs up over Hoodoo Pass. And then from the State Line Trail, Hoodoo Pass, this is the classic Heart Lake area right here. And then down to Trail Lake, and then Trout Creek back towards Superior. So Just to zoom out again and show you the whole map, that's kind of the primary circle around the Great Burn there. But then down here we have the legend and the cover, the overview map, and our great partners, the Montana Wilderness Association and the Great Burn Conservation Alliance as well. So yeah, again, this link will be on the page that we're going to send in a little bit. So if you want to look at it in detail, you're more than welcome to. And then we will go back. So yeah, at this point, thank you for joining us this evening. We're really excited about the map. We're excited to get back out in the Great Burn as soon as we can. If you have any questions for us about the Great Burn map or other maps or whatever, ask them in the chat feature of Zoom, and then Erin is gonna feed those questions to us. So thanks again.
Yeah, we definitely have time to take questions. So the bottom of your screen, you should see a button that says chat. Click on that and type in any and all questions that you have for Jamie and Amelia. Thank you so much, Jamie and Amelia. You make it sound so commonplace and like this is how all maps are and should be created. But I do want to just re-emphasize their commitment to getting out on the ground with their cameras and their GPS units to collect really highly accurate and detailed information in order to produce their maps is so special. And it produces a product that not only has accuracy above and beyond what you might find in another map, most of which are produced just from GPS and GIS data that's out there and that maybe one could collect from the Forest Service or other agency sources, but it also allows them to include details you wouldn't see anywhere else. Some of those things that Amelia mentioned, like putting in the codes so that you can book your campsite easier. And personally for me, the distances that are included on every trail segment are just a real delight to have on a map. So thank you for everything you've committed, Jamie and Amelia, on the ground, at home, to produce this beautiful map and share it with us. It's such an honor to now have the opportunity to share it with all of you. And it's been fun. You brought us and the Great Burn Conservation Alliance together to make this happen. So let's dive into some questions that folks have for you. I do see a lot of people asking how you can get the maps, and I'm going to drop a link here in the chat bar soon after the Q&A session, and you'll be able to click there and place an order to obtain your own copy or copies of the map. They're going to begin shipping at the start of next week. And they'll be $15.95 each plus a small sum for shipping. So let's start out with, what was your favorite day hike in producing this map?
I think my favorite day hike was out of the Blacklead trailhead, Rhodes Peak. Yeah, it was, just, we didn't really know what we were getting into, headed off of Highway 12 there and got up there, and it's just a spectacular area.
Outstanding. And we have, do you want to add to that, Amelia?
No, I think that was probably my favorite day too. It was just one of those days where like, good weather, good day, good. Ended up being a really good route.
It's also such a fantastic area just because it is so close to a lot of us that live around here. It's within touching distance for a day hike. So
yeah, thanks for being open and honest about that. For those of you who are on this call who haven't been to the Great Burn before, it is super easy and super quick to get there. Some places. Some seem deceivingly close, and that takes you a really long time to drive to the trailhead.
Yeah, that's true.
But as the crow flies, all of this really, really incredible wild country is pretty darn close to us here in Missoula. Amelia and Jamie, what mapping software do you use?
We use a lot of different mapping softwares. We use Trimble GPS units that are sort of designed more for data collection than navigation. And then we use a GIS called QGIS or Quantum GIS, which is a free software that does similar things to like what ArcGIS does, but most of the actual making of the map we do in Adobe Creative Suite, mostly in Illustrator.
So we have the Adobe Creative Suite products, kind of the three primary are Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator. And we also rely very heavily on an extension for Adobe Illustrator that allows us to maintain the spatial integrity of our files so that we can, in years down the road, quickly add data or add new ownership boundaries and things like that. So, but our primary vehicle is the Adobe software.
Thanks. Norm is curious if the map shows any trails that are no longer maintained, and then specifically curious about the state line from Schley to Cache Saddle.
I think that section in particular, I have to go back and look. I think that section is not on there anymore. We do show some of the older trails, but probably not every single one.
Yeah, it's a really tough balance, because if you're familiar with looking at the original USGS quads, there's trails everywhere, all over those maps, you know, and very few of those exist to this day. And then there's some that are sort of there. So that's why we try really hard to create a trail classification system on the maps. So we have primary trails, secondary trails, and way trails. And they're all marked, symbolized differently. And it's a really useful tool, we think, for planning trips, particularly loop trips, so you don't end up coming back on a section that may not exist. But it's also, they're just three sort of general buckets, and everybody's tolerance for what they consider a primary trail it varies. So we do try to keep some of the trails that may have junctions, but maybe lesser used and lesser maintained will be symbolized differently. But there's definitely a lot of trails that are just taken off completely. And that's from our own research, as well as talking with other people about that to figure out what we should put on the map. And we're always interested in feedback. So if you do have feedback on certain trails, please get in touch with us.
Yeah, I think we're always careful. There is a general expectation if there is a trail on the map that there will be a trail on the ground. And so we're careful if a trail hasn't been there for a long time. We also coordinate a lot with the Forest Service, and we usually defer to what they request. But yeah, that's kind of, that's like one of the hardest things that we're always kind of trying to figure out is which the old trails to leave on and which to take off. So it's not an exact science.
It's certainly something we struggled with our older version of the Great Burn map. A lot of people reported feedback about a trail that comes up out of the Hart and Pearl Lake Basin area towards Lightning Peak that really was no longer there. But last year, trail crews were on the ground getting that trail rebuilt. And it's in good shape now because it just was reestablished last year, and you'll find it on this map. And you can trust in it more now than you could a couple years ago, but things are constantly evolving, which is a good opportunity for us to just share that, you know, groups like the Great Burn Conservation Alliance are getting out and making sure that trails are staying open in the Great Burn, and we're hugely indebted to the stewardship that they put in. And
for sure.
So yeah, constantly evolving. Mark is curious about wildlife that you encountered during your work in the Great Burn.
We saw quite a few mountain goats.
Mountain goats above Heart Lake, actually.
Lots of birds. We didn't see any bears or elk.
pretty.
Yeah, we didn't see, I mean, we only spent one summer there, so we don't have a whole lot of experience as far as that goes, but they're in there for sure.
Well, we hope you'll keep getting out there and come
Yeah.
back and share some wildlife stories with us. Zach in the chat reminded us that this is an area where you often will encounter goats, and MWA and Great Burn Conservation Alliance is collecting data on goat populations and goat presence in this area. So if this map helps you get out on the Great Burn landscape and you encounter some mountain goats, reach out to us and let you know when and where you saw some. We've got a question from Bert. He's curious how the Great Burn was similar to other Montana wilderness areas that you have mapped, and how was it different?
It was similar, well, obviously similar to kind of the north half of the Selway. When we did that map, there's some overlap and just a lot of those just steep Idaho ridgelines that we were on. And the access was kind of like the Selway map. It's very different than, say, the Pintlers or the Bob, just in the sense that you don't have these big, wide river valleys that you're sort of use as your alignment and your focus to keep yourself oriented. So definitely have to stay on track for what you're looking at.
Yeah, I would say overall the feeling, it really does feel like wilderness, which I think I was a little bit surprised by, just because it is so close, and because it's, the distance between Highway 12 and I-90 is not that far as the crow flies, and so to have a place that feels so wild sandwiched in there was a little bit surprising. But yeah, I think, there's definitely some like pretty dense brush and some pretty steep hillsides that are reminiscent of the Selway.
Impenetrable brush, except for the trail in some places. But that's just a really unique thing too that is unique to that area.
And then just some great ridge lines that, also like the Selway. So.
From beginning to end, how long did it take to produce this Great Burn map, and how does that compare to the duration you've invested in other landscapes?
Well, the life cycle of a map for us is about a year, but that's, this isn't the only project we've been working on for the last year. So it's hard to say how long it took us in terms of, like, this one probably fewer hours than like the Bob Marshall or the Selway. The Selway and the Bob, we spent 2 years in each. It's a set of 2 maps for each of those. So, so yeah, this one was probably fewer days
Definitely
of field work. But
fewer days of field work, fewer miles, but end to end, still about a year. We do the research in the summer. We put the map together in the winter, and then we're always watching the calendar and trying to get to press and get the maps out in April before things really pick up and the snow starts melting around here. So we're on target.
Great. We love that you've incorporated that 1910 burn boundary for those of you who order the map, and I hope that all of you will. It is very subtle and a little bit hard to see, but it's in the light green, and check it out. It's kind of fascinating to look at that and think about it, especially I think when you're going to be out there on the landscape and, just do a little bit of forensics and think about things as a fire scientist and forest ecologist. One person asked about some of the fire impacts from one of our more recent burns. I know the two of you spent some time accessing the Great Burn via Clearwater Crossing. What are the conditions of the bridge and bridges in that area? At least one of them burned in the fires that were a couple of years ago. So any intel there?
Going up the West Fork of Fish Creek there, the
bridge to get across the creek right at the trailhead there is gone. I don't know if there
I
used to
remember
be
there was a
bridge.
trail there, but the one that's a couple miles up is still there. So there's a footbridge across the trail up farther up, and that is still there. But the trail going up there for the first 4 or 5 miles has been really impacted by the fire. It's kind of rutted out, and all the fire weeds coming up, and trees are falling down. So definitely, kind of your classic fire impacts there.
Yeah. And it's an easy ford right at the trailhead. I don't, if that's the bridge that was right at the trailhead that you're wondering about.
It's cold.
It's cold. That day where there was snow, the picture from the snowy, we forded it that day and it was chilly.
Yep. And with all river fords here in Montana, that can vary significantly from season to season. So their experience in the fall might be quite different than what you might experience here in early spring and early summer. The Great Burn is one of those areas that melts out pretty late. I think it often surprises people, but that's one of the things that makes it really incredible habitat for some special species like wolverine too. Amelia and Jamie, Jennifer is curious what maps you're planning for your next project, and also let us know, are there any other new releases or reprints of maps that we should be thinking about coming out here soon from you?
Well, we'll answer the easy one first. We'll have new editions of our Selway maps coming shortly. So that was, it's largely the same map, just updated, a few updated trail classifications based on conversations with people that spend the season back there. And then just always, we're cartographers, so we're always constantly tweaking colors and print values for the press and things. So they'll look slightly different, but by and large, the map that you purchased 4 years ago on that plastic is still going to be fine. We have friends that the cover is completely white because the ink's been wiped off from being in their backpack so long, but the map is still fine. So you don't need to replace your map if you have one from a year ago. And as far as next maps, we don't have an
I'm not
idea
sure
yet.
yet.
I think that the current situation has sort of thrown that even into flux for everybody, but including us, we don't have a plan yet.
Probably another poster or two before we do another recreation map.
Well, thank you for so quickly responding to our request and interest to co-produce this map with you. It's been so much fun over the last year. So without further ado, I've just dropped into the chat the link, which is actually not showing up as a hyperlink. So you'll have to copy and paste it into your browser, or it's pretty short. You could even type it in. It is Cairn, CAIRN.pw/GB-MWA. So that's where you can go to purchase your copy of the map. For those of you who were wanting to go a little bit more in depth as we were panning over the full copy of the map, you can access that same view from within that link. So go ahead and check that out. Norm, you can check out some of those specific trail sections that you were asking about here in the chat and see what it looks like before you place your order. Thanks so much, Jamie and Amelia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been great to share this time with you this evening. And also a huge thanks to Mike and Annie. Please remember that hike registration for this summer is going to open up on Monday, May 4th, as Annie mentioned, if you're an MWA member. And I'm also going to drop a link here into the chat that will allow you to make a donation to become a member if you aren't already one. A donation of $40 or above will give you full membership status in order to register early as of May 4th. You'll also get from us in the mail in the next couple of weeks our incredible hike guide for the summer, which will have the 20 hikes you heard about in the Shining Mountains chapter, as well as the 100 additional hikes that we're also offering all over the state. If you opt not to become a member, these hikes are still open to you. Any that have not filled up, you can register for starting Thursday, May 7th. And I will be emailing all of you with these links tomorrow in case snagging them out of the chat doesn't work well for you, or if you want to wait tomorrow to dive into those additional details. Annie has some closing words for us, so we're going to bring her back here. All right, Annie.
All right, we're so tech savvy, aren't we?
Getting there.
That was awesome. Yay, Jamie, Amelia. That was a wonderful presentation. I don't know how you make topographic maps look so beautiful, but they absolutely are. I almost want to put them on my wall. And anyway, thank you very much. Y'all have some homework. Y'all need to join if you're not a member, and remember to sign up for a hike and order your hot off the press scraper map. I want to thank all of you for your time, your support for our organization. I look forward to seeing you all on the trail. I can't wait to get out there. And remember, stronger together. Be safe out there. Thank you.